Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Mer Murder, where we put the Mer in murder. I'm your host, Mercedes Rose, and I want to thank you guys so much for joining me for another week. There's not a lot of life updates right now. Still the same. Thank you guys so much for your support for the first episode. It was so amazing. I got so many reposts, so many likes on my stories, so many views. I just want to thank you guys all so much for supporting me, and that's really all I got. Honestly, I'm feeling kind of good despite the fact that I'm like withering away right now because I decided to fast for a while now, and I just feel like the Minecraft wither skeleton. Hopefully I look like it. Do I look nice and skinny right now? Oh my god, stop. Yeah, other than that, I feel fine. Honestly, I feel blessed that I even get the opportunity to choose whether I do or don't want to eat, especially with what's going on right now, like the SNAP benefits being taken away. And I don't even get me started. I'm not the most political person in the world, but I do know right from wrong. And I just think that basic human rights should never be up for discussion. I saw this video recently about this homeless man that was, he passed away, and he had like a little documentary, someone was recording him or something like that, and he was just talking about how people treat him so bad, and sometimes they'll be like, oh, get off the street, you bum, and like, he's a human, so that really hurts him. And it's like, you never know someone's circumstances, and it really could be anybody. So it's just so hard to see that people can't just have empathy or sympathy for others. And it just really breaks my heart that if people don't just have the decency to be like, I don't want to see other people struggle, that they at least think and use their brain. And common sense isn't that common, but at least try to use some actual critical thinking skills and think like, this might affect me in some way or another, because no matter what they do, something's going to come back to you. So I think we should all just really take care of each other as much as we can and try to support each other. If you guys want, you should go to a food drive in your area if you can, if you have anything to donate. Times are really hard for everyone, honestly. Speaking of food drive, I had to get my car registered in Georgia today, and of course, the one day that I have to go, there's a food drive at the county tax office, and Atlanta traffic is just so irritating because it's just so inconvenient and random. Like, I literally was like a 20-minute drive away, and once I got literally 0.8 miles away, I saw it on my Apple Maps. The time went from 5 minutes to 15 to 25 to 30 to 45. I was like, I'm literally around the corner. What is happening? All of this traffic was there. There was one cop trying to direct traffic and direct the cars. He honestly did not have a system at all. He was just doing whatever he felt like doing. I was just like, oh my gosh, it was so irritating. But again, I'm blessed to even be able to say that that's something irritating. I have a car that works perfectly fine. I have a roof over my head. I have the ability to eat whenever I do and don't want to. Like, I'm just very thankful for everything I have. And I know at times are really hard for everyone. So we should all just remember to be mindful and thankful for everything we have. That's all. And yeah, with that, let's just get into the case. So having a child is arguably one of the most exciting but challenging jobs anyone can take on. It's impossible to have your eyes on them 24/7, and it's not just them that you have to worry about, but also people around them and what they might do to them, especially when no one is watching. A lot of mothers say they would kill for their kids, and that doesn't come as a shock to many. But what is shocking is hearing about a mother who did kill, but her victims were her own children. Today we'll be discussing the odd and disturbing case of Mitchelle Blair, the mother of 4 from Detroit who murdered 2 of her own children and stored their bodies in a deep freezer for over 2 years. Before we get into the case, I would like to say we will be discussing sensitive topics surrounding children, such as physical and sexual abuse. If you are sensitive to that subject, you are more than welcome to choose another one of my episodes to listen to, but if you'd like to continue, please listen with care. Mitchelle Angela Blair was born on May 10, 1979 in Detroit, Michigan. There wasn't much information I can find regarding Mitchelle's upbringing. However, she did state in a prison interview with Crime Watch Daily that she was a victim of physical and sexual abuse as a child. Mitchelle goes on to explain that she was sexually abused by a family friend who lived around the corner from her. She said the first time she brought up the abuse to her mother, her mom responded with, quote, "It's over with. What the F do you want me to do about it?" This, rightfully so, devastated Mitchelle. Not knowing how to handle her mother's disregard for her well-being at such a young age and still having to see her abuser come in and out of the home led to her feelings of resentment and anger towards her mother and eventually everyone in her life. Mitchelle stated that due to her experience as a child and the abuse she endured, she made her children well aware of what she went through and that they always knew if they ever experienced something like that, They had to tell her because unlike her own mother, she would, quote, actually do something about it. She said in the interview if there was anything she would have ever killed over, it definitely would have been sexual abuse. Mitchelle Blair had her first daughter, Gabrielle, or Gabby, as a teenager, around 18 or 19 years old, with Alexander Dorsey. 2 years later, the couple welcomed their second daughter, Stoni Blair, to their growing family on June 8, 1999. The two split due to their tumultuous relationship, and a couple years later, Mitchelle met Steve Barry. On June 20, 2004, the couple welcomed their first son, Stephen Barry, and a few years later, they had another little boy, whose name I won't say out of respect for him and the family, as he was very young when the events took place, and the subject of surrounding him is very sensitive. The fathers of the children were not very present in their lives, according to Gabby in her interview in the original series, Evil Lives Here. Her parents had a very tumultuous relationship. Her mother hated her father, Gabby said. So once Mr. Dorsey couldn't handle any more conflict and constant arguing, he left the house, leaving behind his 2 daughters and 2 of Blair's sons. With all the anger and no one to direct it towards, Mitchelle began targeting her own children. On the outside, Mitchelle presented herself as a very kind and loving woman. Many neighbors recalled that she was friendly, nice, giving, and just a pleasant, hard-working mother trying to provide for her family. But they had no idea the horrors of abuse and torment she conducted on her own children behind closed doors. So this is where we'll be getting into the details of abuse endured by the Blair children. If you do not wish to hear the details, you can skip to the time code at the bottom of the screen, or if you're only listening and not watching, I will leave a note in the description of the episode of where to skip to. If you are staying, please listen with care. Without a stable job, Mitchelle began relying on food stamps and government aid to support her family. However, the money she received became her financial source for drugs and alcohol instead. Gabby recalls many times where the family would run out of food, resorting to eating canned potatoes and leftovers from other kids' lunches at school. Starving her children was only one of the things on Mitchelle's laundry list of abuse for her children. They were subjected to prolonged exercise, such as wall sits, where the already fragile children were forced to lean on their backs against a wall and stoop into a sitting position, and Mitchelle would make them hold that, and she said that if they stopped, they would be in even greater trouble. As if that wasn't worse enough, Mitchelle was always nearby to berate them and ensure that they were sitting in the position that she told them to. Mitchelle abused her children incessantly, burning them with irons and boiling hot water, pouring alcohol in their wounds, forcing them to drink window cleaner, and hitting them with anything she could find around the house, including extension cords and belt buckles. However, Mitchelle was very meticulous about her abuse. She made sure to only hit them and give them bruises on places that would be covered just in case they would have short sleeves on or shorts. And in the event that any of her abuse was discovered, she always had an excuse prepared for them to give. Gabby recalls a time when her mother became upset while they were both in the bathroom, and during her fit of rage, she grabbed a gold-plated curling iron, a tool that's pretty familiar in Black households, and she smacked Gabby in the mouth with it, busting her lip and cracking her tooth with the blow. Shortly after, there was a ring at the doorbell. Gabby's aunt was at the door. Mitchelle rushed to the door to let her company in, but not before giving Gabby a cover story, which was that her youngest brother smashed his toy car on her face, causing the injury. Upon seeing Gabby, her aunt was immediately concerned, but after Mitchelle gave an explanation, she simply offered to bring her to the dentist so that she could get her tooth fixed, saying, "Don't you want to feel pretty again?" You would think this would be a golden opportunity for Mitchelle. Evidence of her abuse could be patched up by someone else and she could move on. However, that wasn't the case. Mitchelle declined the offer and made up some random story about how Gabby thought she looked unique with a chipped tooth, although that wasn't the case. You see, the Blair children did not go to the doctor, did not have regular visits with the dentist, not even an annual checkup with either of them, because Mitchelle was always afraid of Child Protective Services, and she thought if she took her children to the doctor, they would for sure discover their abuse at her hands. Unfortunately, the aunt accepted this bizarre answer of wanting to look unique and did not press the issue any further or get Gabby the help she obviously needed. And honestly, that part pisses me off so bad because I don't know about their family, but in my family, we're raised to always make sure you carry yourself and look a certain way that's like decent, acceptable, because it's already bad enough being a Black person in society. You always have to go the extra mile, look extra good, like be even more put together, carry yourself properly. Like that just makes no sense. And then as a little Black girl, it's just like you already feel so out of place and like people make fun of all your looks until you really grow into them. So it's just like, duh, she would want her tooth fixed. Like I actually just recently chipped my tooth after 21 beautiful years of great teeth. My mom paid good money for those braces to get my teeth fixed. I busted it at the bottom of a pool. I'll put the pictures in here. But that was like the most mortifying month of my life. Like, I genuinely could not stand my smile. Like, I was always so insecure about my smile in the mirror. Like, and I'm 22 and I've built great confidence over the years. Imagine being younger. I think I think around this time, Gabby had to have been, don't quote me on this, but probably 11, 12. She was pretty young around this time. I tried doing the math throughout the years of the case. And I think around this time she had to have been like 11, 12-ish. And she didn't specifically state it in the interview that she did for the show, but I just think that doesn't make any sense. And on top of that, you're an adult. If I told my mom after I busted my tooth, if I was like, Mom, I think I look cute and unique, I think it's fun, she'd have been like, Mercedes, get off my phone and stop playing. Like, go get your tooth fixed now. Like, you don't even want me to go out there looking crazy like that. So why would you not just be like, she's a kid. She can't speak for herself and make that type of decision. You should have just been like, no, we're going to get your tooth fixed. Like, you need to carry yourself properly. You need to make sure you look presentable. But again, I don't like to blame people for not doing things. And also, it wasn't her place. Like, it's not her daughter. She didn't have to do anything. But I think as someone, my aunts would have done it. My uncles would have done it. My grandmother, my grandfather. Like, I just feel like if you have a really good family unit, like, they would have made sure to show up and make sure that you looked fine and make sure that you were okay. But I digress. One day in August of 2012, the youngest son of the family, we'll call him Junior for the sake of anonymity and for being able to keep up with his name in the story since I don't want to use his real name. Junior was around 5 or 6 years old at this time, and he was downstairs playing with his 2 toy army soldiers. Mitchelle, who's now 32, notices the way that he's playing with the toys, and it seems a bit suggestive and almost sexual to her, and she begins screaming and interrogating him. She asks Junior questions like, where did you learn that from? Did someone do that to you? And with every question, Mitchelle's anger grew, even though his answer was always no. Around this time, Stephen, who was now 9 years old, was picking on his brother, and Mitchelle asked Junior if Stephen was the one who had inappropriate behavior with him. Gabby said that in her interview with the show Evil Lives Here, she said that he was picking on him. I don't think anything inappropriate. I think just older brother, younger brother, just picking on him, being siblings. I don't think it was anything serious or crazy. And she said that. She said it wasn't anything it was never anything like that. So Mitchelle asked Junior if Stephen was the one who was being inappropriate with him. She asked over and over and over until she got the answer she was looking for. And eventually little Junior said yes. These claims of sexual abuse to this day have never been substantiated. Mitchelle left the room, but quickly returned with an extension cord, which she used to wrap around Stephen's neck and swing him over her shoulder as she carried him into the master bedroom and shut the door behind her. For almost 2 weeks, Stephen was isolated from the rest of his family, and he was tortured by his mother. Stephen was starved, burned with boiling hot water on his private parts, causing the skin to peel off, forced to drink window cleaner, beaten and kicked to a point where he was unrecognizable by his siblings due to his misshapen head, and he was asphyxiated with plastic bags, and if he fought to breathe and broke through those, stronger bags were placed over his head, and he was suffocated again until he lost consciousness. And then Mitchelle would smack him until he woke back up again. On August 29th of 2012, Mitchelle decided Stephen's abuse was over and that he had, quote, learned his lesson for what he did to his brother. But the next day, on August 30th, 2012, she discovered Stephen lying in the floor responsive next to a puddle of his own vomit. Mitchelle began crying and tending to her battered child, apologizing profusely. She called her eldest daughter, Gabby, who was about 14 at this time, into the room to say goodbye to her brother. Gabby said her mother told Stephen that she loved him, and he weakly responded that he loved her too, then instructed her to say her final goodbyes to her brother. Gabby told Stephen she loved him as well, and she bent down to give him a kiss on his forehead. As she did so, Stephen let out his final breath, and at just 9 years old, Stephen died in his home in the arms of the very person who took his life. Shortly after this, Mitchelle wrapped Stephen's body in a bed cover and made Gabby assist her in carrying him downstairs, where she had a deep freezer. Gabby was instructed to open the freezer and watched as her mother lowered Stephen's body into the freezer, where he would lay for the next 2, almost 3 years, as his mother and other siblings lived in the same house. For weeks, Mitchelle drilled her children on their story to give to people if they asked about Stephen's whereabouts. She told them to say that he was at an aunt's house in Georgia or at his father's house. Gabby wanted nothing more than to tell people about her brother's death, but she was always fearful of the consequences she might face, or the consequences her younger siblings might face if the authorities showed up to her house and she wasn't there to protect them. The saddest part of it all is that Gabby thought people simply wouldn't believe her. Her mother had a stellar reputation in the neighborhood. Even after the crimes were discovered, people still couldn't believe Mitchelle could commit these heinous crimes. 9 months later, in May of 2013, Mitchelle became enraged again. The same situation as last time. Mitchelle questioned her youngest son, Junior, about if he was sexually abused, but this time by his older sister, Stoni, who is now 13 years old. Junior insisted that he was not abused by his sister and said no over and over again. However, this was not the answer Mitchelle wanted. She threatened to beat Junior if he did not tell her the truth, coercing him to eventually say yes to the claims that Stoni had been sexually assaulting him. Like in Stephen's case, there was no evidence to prove that Stoni ever sexually abused Junior, and she also denied the accusations as well. But that did not matter to Mitchelle. She only saw red. In Gabby's opinion, Stoni faced the same punishment Stephen faced, but way worse, as her mother did not feed Stoni at all, causing her to become skin and bones. Gabby felt helpless, having to go through the same situation for a second time, and thought that one day they would just find Stoni laying in the master bedroom dead. But that's not what happened. A recent inspection of the home led to a brief pause in Stoni's abuse, but Mitchelle made sure to cover up what was occurring in the home. She instructed Stoni to lay under a bed to hide from inspectors. Gabby spent the whole day cleaning the house, cleaning her siblings' blood off the bedroom walls, and trying her best to comply with her mother's demands to have the house clean before they arrived. And as quickly as the inspectors came, they also left. Gabby said in her interview in Evil Lives Here, all they had to do was open the freezer and this whole thing would have been over. Shortly following the inspection, Stoni's abuse became worse. She was tortured by her mother, who beat her severely, starved her, asphyxiated her with garbage bags until she lost consciousness, and hit her with 2x4s. Gabby recalls one instance where Mitchelle hit Stoni so hard in the side of the head, around her temple area, with a 2x4 that it split open and blood sprayed out of her head. Gabby said that her mother cheered and she said, "Ooh, look at that," as she saw the blood spray from her 13-year-old daughter's head from the wound that she inflicted. Mitchelle grabbed a black pajama shirt and began strangling Stoni until she was barely conscious. She then instructed Gabby to help carry her to the freezer where Stephen's body was, and she laid her right on top of him. At this time, Stoni was still conscious and actively fighting for her life. As Mitchelle noticed that Stoni was still trying to breathe, she began suffocating her once more with a plastic bag, but then she stopped. She removed her hands from Stoni's nose and said, "You know what? F it. You're as good as gone anyways." Mitchelle closed the freezer and told Gabby, "Don't cry over that, B," and that she caused all this to happen anyways because she hurt her brother, Junior. Stoni died on May 25th, 2013. Her body laid on top of her brother's in that deep freezer, and they both wouldn't be found for another 2 years. Stoni's death, like Stephen's, took an immense toll on Gabby. This was her little sister, and she felt terrible that Stoni's last memories were probably of Gabby helping her mother carry her into what would have been like her coffin. But Gabby couldn't grieve, not with her mother now having less targets to take her anger out on, and constant threats that if Gabby were to speak out or bring police to her house, that she would be responsible for what happens next. Mitchelle told Gabby that she would take her little brother Junior, kill him, and then kill herself. And obviously, after killing 2 of her siblings, Gabby believed her, so she never got any help. In March of 2015, Mitchelle was now 35 years old, and she received an eviction notice in the mail. It stated that Mitchelle owed somewhere between $2,200 to $2,300 to the apartment complex, and if she didn't pay the amount in full, she would be evicted. This was obviously impossible for Mitchelle to come up with. If you remember, I stated before, she did not have a stable job, and in fact, she stopped looking for work altogether, so she continued to use her money for drugs and alcohol. With no other option, on March 24th, Mitchelle took her 2 surviving children, Gabby, who's now 17, and Junior, who is now 8. She brought them to the neighbor's house and asked the neighbor if she could watch her children before shockingly admitting to everything. She told the neighbor that Stephen and Stoni were dead, and they have been for 2 years, and that she was hiding their bodies. The police rushed to the housing complex to not only retrieve the bodies of Stephen and Stoni, but also get Gabby and Junior into protective custody. Mitchelle was arrested at the housing complex. She called out for her 2 children, apologizing for what she did and what she put them through, begging for them to hug her before the officers took her away. Now, this part of the story is where Mitchelle gains most of her notoriety. The following day, March 25th, 2025, Mitchelle was charged with 5 counts of first-degree child abuse, and her bond was set to $1 million. However, the crime was still being investigated as a double homicide due to the severity of Stephen and Stoni's conditions. Being frozen for almost 3 years, they needed to be thawed for 3 whole days before any autopsies could be completed. When officers actually found Stoni's body, they reported that they found an old woman in a freezer. That's how unrecognizable she was. Eventually, in April, Mitchelle's charges were bumped up to 2 counts of felony murder, 2 counts of premeditated murder, 2 counts of torture, 4 counts of first-degree child abuse, and 1 count of committing first degree in the presence of a child. Stephen and Stoni's cause of death were found to be multiple blunt force trauma, as well as burning in Stephen's case, and the manners were ruled homicides. Throughout court proceedings, Mitchelle consistently pled guilty and on numerous occasions confessed to her acts, but under the guise that she was protecting her youngest son from the, quote, demons in her 2 deceased children. She was prone to aggressive outbursts in the courtroom, often screaming, cursing, and threatening everyone around her. She screamed in court one day, "Everybody want to know? Yes, I did kill her," following an outburst she had directed towards Alexander Dorsey, Stoni's father, who was testifying to the marks of abuse his family members claimed to have noticed on his daughter one day.
To protect and abandonment.
And never be in there for his kids.
Mother,
She was
stop.
always on sex sites, though,
Mother,
right?
mother, listen to me.
I had to beg you to come see me. For real,
Mother, listen to
no
me.
matter how much you lie or how your lawyers lie.
Listen to me. This is a civil case. It's not a criminal case. We can and we will do it without you.
I never
We
tried to
will
say I
do it
didn't. I
without
did it,
you.
but that does not negate the fact that they were never there for their children. I had to struggle with them all the time. They were never there.
You get
Stephen,
your
you
chance.
know we had to beg you. Me, Stephen, all of us used to cry for you. Stephen. You. Everybody want to know? Yes, I did kill her.
Blair screams at Dorsey, claiming he's a deadbeat dad, saying he was never there for his kids and only showed up now that one of them was dead. She said, quote, "See what your daughter did to my son?" And then Blair called Dorsey a pathetic A.B. and a effing drunk before being fully removed from the courtroom.
You want to put on a show for the news, though?
Mr. Devlin.
Your Honor, he had no knowledge of any of the
And then Dorsey, you going to get on the news and say, what's the
Okay, Mom, you're not going to be able to stay in the hearing
Period.
if you can't be quiet until it's your turn.
What the damn fool y'all putting on that show.
Step out here for a minute. Step out.
You're going to step up.
Rape my kids. You pathetic. He's drunk. I tell the truth on that.
Another outburst occurred in a later proceeding of June of 2015 while a videotape played in the courtroom. A social worker and the youngest Blair son was having an interview, and he told the social worker he saw his mother kill Stephen. This prompted Mitchelle to yell across the courtroom, "He didn't see me kill Stephen," because it was unintentional. Mitchelle's lack of remorse for murdering her children put a really bad taste in the community's mouth. People could not fathom how cold and evil Mitchelle truly was. How this apparently sweet and kind woman was actually a monster. And her particular disdain towards Stoni really cements the idea, in my opinion, that Mitchelle really did project her childhood trauma onto her kids. Stoni's abuse was considered far worse, and according to Mitchelle, she intentionally killed Stoni and often called her the B word. She even said that if she had the chance, she would kill them again. Due to Mitchelle's abuser being a woman, I believe that she treated Stoni way worse, probably envisioning what was done to her as a child being done to Junior, but by Stoni. I believe she used this as sort of an excuse to get her inner child the justice that she wanted when she was abused. And I think she kind of made this her opportunity to heal something inside her in some odd way. I don't know. Mitchelle stuck to her plea of guilty, saying, "I did what I did for my baby. I'm already saying I did it. I'm freely giving myself and accepting life in prison." Judge Kenneth King wanted her to take a week to think over her plea, considering the severity of her charges, but Mitchelle was set on her decision. On July 17th of 2015, Mitchelle Angela Blair was convicted of felony murder for the death of her 9-year-old son, Stephen Barry, and first-degree premeditated murder for the death of her 13-year-old daughter, Stoni Blair. She was sentenced to 2 life terms without the possibility of parole, and she sits in the Women's Huron Valley Correctional Facility in Ypsilanti, Michigan, which is about 45 minutes from Detroit, and she will continue to sit there for the rest of her life. Mitchelle's rage and behavior did not improve after her conviction. In 2018, Mitchelle received 2 more convictions for assault on a prison or other confinement employee. One incident occurred in May of 2018, and the other just 2 months later in July, both adding an additional 3 to 5 years to Blair's sentence. During my research, I stumbled upon a document that had over 150 pages of incident reports regarding Mitchelle and her aggression, threats, and sometimes physical assault towards law enforcement and other inmates within the prison walls. Mitchelle spit at guards and inmates, threatened to kill them, and even physically assaulted some of them. Rehabilitation just doesn't seem like something for Blair, and her sort of willingness and peace to spend the rest of her life behind bars really feels unfair. But knowing that she's in there fighting with her inner demons and will be in there for the rest of her life like that is kind of like justice in itself. Gabby and Junior, Blair's 2 surviving children, now live with their aunt who adopted Junior so the siblings can stay together instead of being separated by the system. They seem to be living life as best as they can, learning to cope with the pain and trauma from their past, and taking comfort in the fact that they can live a better life, one that their mother will never be able to experience or take away from them. If you're wondering where the fathers of the children stand, Steve Barry had his parental rights to Junior terminated by the state of Michigan. He was deemed unfit to parent due to not having stable employment nor a place to live. Alexander Dorsey, Stoni and Gabby's father, however, was allowed to maintain his rights to his one surviving daughter, Gabby. I'm sure some of you may feel like their negligence is also to blame in the deaths of their children, and it may feel like they got away from this whole ordeal particularly unscathed, but their presence or lack thereof in their children's lives did not go unnoticed. Assistant Attorney General Kelly McGiesi said, "You wake up every morning after 2012 and you have a sibling in the freezer and then another sibling, while these 2 men are waking up in their own homes without a care in the world. Oh, I'm sorry, they couldn't get a job. These children are waking up with 2 dead siblings in their home because these men did not care enough to find out, to get involved in their children's lives." These words and the deaths of their children will haunt these fathers for the rest of their lives. They both owed over $10,000 in child support. Alexander Dorsey actually owed $39,000, but no dollar amount should have stopped them from seeing their children and making sure that they were okay. These men knew the type of person Mitchelle was. They knew about her bad temper. They knew about her vile behavior. They saw the bruises on their children, or were at least told about them by family members that did see them, but they still left their innocent and vulnerable children to fend for themselves because they couldn't get their lives together, because they were cowards. And I honestly hope that haunts them for the rest of their lives. Okay, before I wrap up this case, I actually want to talk about something I came across while I was researching. A promo on Instagram for Gabby's appearance on Evil Lives Here, where she discusses her story and her experience that she survived as a young girl. I highly recommend you guys watch the episode. It's on Hulu, and I think you can stream in a couple other places, but it is season 13, episode 2. I don't know how Gabby could sit there and recall all of these events. Like, she's very strong, in my opinion. Like, I could not do what she did, and I really think you guys should watch and listen and hear from the victim on your own, and definitely in your own accord. I think it's really important to do so. But in the comments, I saw a comment that really, really pissed me off and just infuriated me and disgusted me, and I really feel the need to share it with you guys. So this woman writes in all caps, "I am personally looking at Gabby weird," straight face emoji. "She was old enough to run and get help for her siblings, so I think she was just weird. I watched the ID channel Evil Lives Here, and I'm livid that she went to school and not tell anyone. Her sister and brother would still be alive." Like, oh my gosh. First of all, Gabrielle was a child. She endured years of abuse and watched her little siblings die. Not only that, but she held their dead bodies and was forced to aid in her abuser's crime. You couldn't even fathom what that does to someone, let alone a child. Not only that, but it was not Gabby's responsibility to save her siblings. All the adults in their lives should have been there. They should have cared, and they should have gotten help. It was not Gabby's responsibility to save her siblings. She's not the parent. She wasn't the adult. There's absolutely nothing to blame Gabby for. She is just as much a victim as her siblings who passed away. I'm sure she already has to live with the guilt of being there when all this happened. She does not deserve to have some loser on the internet comment about her experience of a situation that was out of her control. Shame on you. And second, there are so many layers as to why this comment pisses me off. Like, I know you guys see me, well, if you're watching, I know you see me still looking at my iPad, but I genuinely, like, when I get angry, like, there's like 50 thoughts that run through my head all at one time. So I felt the need to just type this out. So I just wanted to make sure I could properly articulate myself with the things that I wanted to say instead of just having my mind and mouth go wild, because this would be a very different show if I did. But You are a Black woman. I did go on your page, and honestly, I should just leave it there because I just think that this person has no room to judge anybody, has no room to speak on anybody. Like, let me just keep my peace. Let me just keep my mouth shut. I went on your page. You are a Black woman. Sometimes our own people can be our biggest fans, but also our worst enemies. How could you as a Black woman sit there and listen to another woman's story of abuse? Another Black woman's story of abuse. A Black child at that. She was a child when this happened. Like, I think she watched that like episode and saw that. I think Gabby's probably 28, 29. I really don't know. Please don't quote me on anything, but Gabby's an adult now. She wasn't an adult when this happened. And when you're being abused, you can't just go and get help. Her mom said she would kill her little brother and herself, and she already killed 2 of her siblings. Why would she not believe that? And for you to sit here and be like, you should have went to school and got help. You should have, could have, would have. Shut the up. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But how could you as a Black woman sit there and listen to another Black woman's story of abuse? Gabby still has, if you go and watch the show, Gabby still has visible scars on her face and body. She has a busted lip. She has a scar on her eyebrow. There was obvious signs of trauma that stick with her for the rest of her life. You watched her be vulnerable and tell her story, and then you ran to the internet to say, oh, I'm looking at you sideways because you didn't get help. You're disgusting. Like, who do you think you are to think that she would even care about you looking at her sideways? Until you have lived through what she has, you have absolutely no right to discuss what she would have done, should have done, or place any blame on her. And lastly, you're a disgusting person. You're a sad excuse for a woman, and I honestly hope you're having all the days you deserve. Yeah, that's that. We can all learn from this woman and remember that we are given the privilege in the true crime community to hear these victim stories, to hear about the trauma they face, not only to learn from it, but to protect ourselves and the people we love. Victims do not owe us their story. Let us all remember we should be listening to these stories with respect and sympathy and provide a safe space for victims to talk. Some aren't even lucky enough to still be here to tell their story, so we should always be respectful and kind. Now, obviously that we're done covering the main case, you know that I always like to bring the attention back to our victims because they are what's most important. So, Stephen and Stoni were laid to rest on April 13th, 2015. They were buried next to each other, Stephen in a blue coffin and Stoni in a pink one, at Mount Hope Memorial Gardens. I want us to take the time to remember Stephen and Stoni for the beautiful children they were. Stephen, who was also referred to as Lil Man by his loved ones, was a sweet, kind, and playful little boy. He enjoyed playing with his friends and enjoying snacks. Stoni, who was also called Honey Bear by her loved ones, was remembered as a bubbly, outgoing, funny, and kind little girl. Stoni was growing up to be a beautiful and social teenager, and she was loved by all that knew her. Stephen and Stoni will be sincerely missed by everyone who is lucky enough to know them in the short time they had on this earth. I hope their souls are at peace and that they know that they were loved and adored by many, even if the person who should have been the main one to show them love did not. Before we get into the next part of our show, I want to leave you all with some resources. If you or someone you know is or you suspect is being abused, there are many resources available. Please do not hesitate to reach out for help. Someone could be counting on you. The National Child Abuse Hotline is available 24/7, and you can call or text 800-422-4453. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is 800-799-7233. You can also text BEGIN to 88788. The National Sexual Assault Hotline is 800-656-4673. But if there's ever an emergency, please call 911. And with that, this has been the case of Stephen Berry and Stoni Blair at the hands of their mother, Mitchelle Blair. Okay, guys, so now we're at the part of the show where we give our ratings to the police/investigators as well as the judge/jury. But for this case, I am going to do things a little differently. I'm giving my normal ratings, but I'm also going to be giving the community a rating. So first, the police. I'm giving them a B-. Honestly, there wasn't much involvement. Obviously, like, Mitchelle just told on herself, so they didn't really have to do much. There was a swift arrest, but I am docking them points because when they first announced, without really having any true concrete facts, they said that Stoni was an old woman in that freezer, and Gabby and her little brother, Junior, that we're calling, they were watching and they saw these announcements. So imagine hearing the abuse, watching the abuse, and then the police are like, oh, we found an old woman in her freezer. Like, that's their sister. That's so disrespectful, and that's so harmful. So you're getting minus points for that. You're done. B minus. For the judge and the jury, they're getting our first A+. The punishment absolutely did fit the crime. I know there's some states that have the death penalty. I can't remember if Michigan does or not, but death would have been Mitchelle's easy way out, and that would not have been fair. So giving her life for her to sit there and rot, that was perfect. I honestly think she deserves nothing more than to wake up and go to bed with nothing but the constant thoughts and reminders of her actions, and I hope she's having all the days that she deserves in her little cell. And lastly, like I said, this is for the community. They are getting an F minus times a million, because where the hell was everyone? The children were pulled from school. I don't see anything specifically talking about a year that they were pulled from, but they were pulled from school and homeschooled. I don't know if there's any systems in place for people going to homeschool. I know like there's even a case going on right now that I'm going to try to cover soon when I get more information and when things are more finalized. But like these children were pulled from school and then they were murdered by their father. Do we not do anything? Like, do you guys not go and like send CPS or someone to make sure like the house was in livable condition? Like, I'll put pictures up of the house. The house was disgusting. Like, at least make sure that they're in an environment that they can actually learn in. If classrooms were disgusting, we would not be letting some people teach. Like, make sure their house looks presentable. Make sure it looks okay. Like, and on a whim too. Don't just be giving people, oh, heads up, we're going to come in 2 weeks and check your house. Then she can have her kids clean up the house and clean her siblings' blood off the wall. What the hell? Like, pop up on a random Tuesday and be like, hey, we got to make sure your kids are learning, make sure they're reading properly, and make sure the house is proper. They would have seen 2 deceased children. They would have seen disgusting. Like, the house is the most disgusting, filthy house I've seen in a very long time. Like, I cannot fathom how she was even comfortable as a woman, as a wild beast, to live there. Whatever. But yeah, I think that there needs to be some sort of system in place or something where we make sure that kids that are being homeschooled are actually being taken care of and actually learning. Like, who said, how are they allowed to just take kids out and be like, yeah, I'm just gonna teach them? You have no teaching license. That's like, we need to take teaching way more seriously. Teachers need to get paid way more, and we need to take that stuff more seriously. And the neighbors, they saw so much of Mitchelle, but not enough of her kids. If you guys are all buddy with this lady, you need to make sure that you see her children too. Like, the kids disappeared and everyone was just like, that's weird. And you guys just thought, that's weird. For years? Like, the entire community just needed to do better. This is not what community is about at all. And I will never stop expecting more from the Black community. We need to look out for one another because no one else is. Like, how many times do we have to go over this? Allegedly, Mitchelle told a few neighbors Stoni and Steven were dead prior to her eviction and arrest. And they just like never reported that. I saw that on some news site. I don't remember if I sourced it or not, but there was a news article that said that Mitchelle brought up the abuse and the fact that her kids were dead and her neighbors just never said anything. Did you all think she was joking? Like, how does that even come up in a conversation? She's like, my 2 kids are dead, like, whatever. And you guys didn't think like, what? And then especially after not seeing them, you didn't see them. And she told you, but this is alleged. So I don't know. It could have been a lie. And then lastly, the grandmother of Gabby and Stoni said that they tried to see the girls, but they always got brushed off and they always wondered if they were okay. But obviously, if you cared enough, you would have made sure you saw those girls. Regardless if your son owed money or was afraid of Mitchelle, like, you would make sure you saw them. And it was a really weird interview too. It was actually an interview for a news station, and she just got back with her son. I believe this is Alexander, Stoni's dad. They just got back from the morgue from identifying Stoni's body. There wasn't a tear in this lady's face. And again, we can't tell people how to grieve, what it should look like, how they should act. She could have been holding herself together and just like powering through for her son and the loss of her own grandbaby. But like, you guys didn't check on these kids for years. You just identified her dead body. And now you're just at the news like, yeah, my son tried his best and he just couldn't see them. And we're just really sad. That's not good enough for me. That's not good enough for me. I'm sorry.
So your son would go to the house, try to see his daughter, and she would say
that she's going on a sleepover or she's over a friend's house or she went somewhere with one of her family members, you know.
But it turns out she was in a freezer.
Exactly.
That's got to be shocking.
Yes, it is.
And again, this is not blaming her in any way. Again, nobody is at fault except for Mitchelle. At the end of the day, Mitchelle did what she did on her own accord. She murdered her children. She knew what she was doing. But I just think more people should have just been more involved. Like, I think everyone just has such a terrible bystander complex. Like, we don't involve ourselves enough. I'd rather get my ass beat and someone's like, I take care of my kids, mind your business, and beat me up and I was completely wrong, than to sit there and be like, oh, 2 kids next door to me died because I didn't do anything about it. And I don't understand, maybe you couldn't hear the abuse, but I know growing up, if I was getting my butt whooped or my neighbor was getting their butt whooped, I could hear it through the walls. So did nobody hear anything either? Like, I'm just so confused as to how this happened and how this was allowed to happen for so long. And I wasn't getting my butt whooped for nothing. I deserved everything coming to me. Please do not call the people on my mama. But yeah, the community just gets an F. Everyone gets an F minus. I'm so extremely disappointed in you guys. Don't even speak to me for the rest of the day, okay? It's over. It's over. And that's the episode this week. Our sources this week were 13 News Now, All Things Interesting, CBS News, Crime Watch Daily, Detroit Free Press, Detroit News, Find a Grave, KSL.com, MDOC.web, MLive.com, and USA Today. Okay, guys, that's it for this week's episode. Thank you all so much for listening, and you can listen to the podcast on all platforms. And I have a YouTube channel. The show also has a TikTok and Instagram, and we have a Discord discussion group where we can discuss each week's case and also keep up to date on all things true crime. If you guys did enjoy the show, please give it a like. Please give me a rating, give me comments, interact with the show any way you can. I will really appreciate it, and I'll love you forever. I'll love you guys forever no matter what anyway. But if you could, it would be really great for the show. Great engagement, great boost. I want to get some more listeners. So if you guys don't mind doing that for me, please. All links for the show will be in the description of the episodes, and I'll also put them on the screen if you're watching as well. So if you do have a chance, you can follow me and take a look at those, see what we got going on all of our other pages. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for being here for another week of Mer Murder. Remember to tune in every Wednesdays, and please take care of yourselves, take care of one another, and I will see you guys next Wednesday to put some more Mer in Murder. I love you guys. Bye.